Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Shaul Praver from Rabbi Rock. Welcome. It's good to have you here again. And I'd like to talk about the biggest subject which probably disturbs everybody, and that's the question of what happens after we die. Are we dead? Final? No more life? No more consciousness? Or is this life just as the rabbis in the Talmud say, a pruz door, a hallway to something perhaps even greater? That is the question that causes a lot of people anxiety every day, every moment of our lives. Each part of our heart debates with the other part. One part of our heart says, this is it. This is final. When we die, it's over, and there will be no remembrance of ever having lived. The other part of our heart says, this is just a stepping stone of life. Life is an evolution. We are here for a reason, to learn things, to overcome challenges, tests, and to ultimately evolve into a greater being. Judaism picks the latter. Judaism believes life is eternal. Every time that we are called up to the Torah to make a blessing, we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Chayei olam, eternal life, have you planted in the midst of us. We believe that life is eternal. You might be surprised to hear that we believe in reincarnation. It's called Gilgul Hanshama, the cycle of the soul, and that we come back to this world as long as it takes to get it right. The rabbis really have not put this concept on the front burner because we don't want people to think that life is a dry run. We have to give it the best shot that we can, and that's the reason why, in my view, probably many of you out there have not even heard that Judaism believes this. But it does, in fact, believe it. What is some evidence we find in the Talmud that the world is eternal, that the soul is eternal? There's a famous story of Rabbi Akiva, and he approaches a philosopher, and the philosopher asks him, Rabbi, how do we know that there is a creator of this world? Maybe it was always here, or maybe it came by accident. So I want to ask you out there, honestly, if you found this watch, I'm going to remove it. If it's a nice watch. If you found this watch someplace out in the desert, would you ever believe that this watch was made through thousands, maybe even millions of years of the wind blowing just in the right direction for it to come about with all of its particulars, with its band, with its markings, with its gears? Would you believe that it was formed by nature, random events in nature? And I think that every single one of you out there would say, no, there had to be a watchmaker. And this is the famous proof of, or the evidence of Rabbi Akiva, that when we see an intelligent structure before us, we believe that it has a maker. As you believe there is a watchmaker, you may also believe that there is a maker, a creator of the world, because its intelligent structure is more phenomenal in many, many ways, in many more dimensions than the watch. On this very deep subject, we have a very, very special and talented guest, and his name is Rabbi Yaakov Astor. He's the author of a book called Soul Searching. Rabbi Astor has co-written more than 20 books. He is the former yeshiva and principal in Spring Valley. He currently writes a regular column on Jewish ethics, which appears on aish.com, which is the largest Jewish content site on the web. And he's very graciously come to talk to us today about his book, which takes everything that I told you one step further, and he will provide you very interesting evidence, scientific evidence, that perhaps, and maybe it really is true, that what Judaism says about the soul being eternal, maybe we will discover that through science someday, and we'll all be very relieved to find out that this is not it. Life does not end when we die, but it begins and transforms and evolves in new, exciting ways. So, with no further ado, we bring on our friend Rabbi Jacob Astor. Shalom. Shalom. Here we are. We're here with a very distinguished guest, Rabbi Jacob Astor. Rabbi Astor, thank you so much for being here today. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
You've written a really fascinating book. I just love this book, and I've been telling people about it. It's called Soul Searching, Seeking Scientific Ground for a Jewish Tradition of an Afterlife by Rabbi Jacob Astor. And suppose we start by you telling us the story about what is the scientific ground for the Jewish tradition of an afterlife?
Well, let me begin by explaining what's unique about this book.
Sure.
It's connecting new wisdom with old wisdom. In the past 30 years, different branches of science have begun to study the possibility of life without the body, the possibility of a soul. And this has started maybe in the mid-1970s. And over that period, there actually a Gallup poll was taken in the early 80s, and it was determined that at that point, 8 million Americans had what's called a near-death experience. They were at some point of probable clinical death, and yet they were, instead of their minds being blank, they had a certain vivid perception of different things. There were different stages, and perhaps an out-of-body experience, seeing a light, going down a tunnel, something called a life review. And as this breakthrough began to spread, more and more scientists got involved in it. And for the past 30 years, this has become more and more in the public consciousness.
So let me send a person, maybe they had a heart attack, they're on the operating table, they die on the table, their heart is not beating, their brain is not functioning, and they have experiences?
Sometimes they could be clinically dead without any heartbeat or something like that. And there's different definitions of clinical death, but whatever it is, there could be essentially not having a heartbeat, for instance, for 5, 10, even 15, 20 minutes or more. And yet they come out of it, and then they tell of certain experiences. For instance, one of the ones that struck me the first time was this woman said she remembered her body floating above her body,
yes,
looking down upon the operating table, seeing her there, and then working on her. And then she actually floated outside the building, apparently. It was in a high skyscraper. And one of the things she saw when she went just outside the building is that on a ledge off to the side, there was a shoe. It's strange to remember a shoe. Why did she remember that? When she seemed to come back when they revived her, and she was sometime later, she recalled the story. She said, I saw the shoe out there on the ledge. And sure enough, they checked, the doctors and nurses checked, and there was this shoe that could not be seen from the ground, could not be seen from a window. There's really no normal way they could understand how she could have been seen it, but the shoe was there.
Okay.
Now, that's not the typical. Usually you don't have such interesting things that come, you can sort of verify it. But the idea that there's images and perceptions and things going on when people should not, they technically should not be seeing anything because their brain is not alive, the heart is not pumping, have been documented now in the millions and millions of times. And one of the unique thing of my book that I'm trying to do that I don't think anyone else has done yet is that I've taken these studies and these reports and compared them to 3,000-year-old reports in Jewish tradition.
Oh yeah, that's what I want to hear about. How they, I read your book and I saw how they kind of lined up, similar, almost identical in many respects. The descriptions of the rabbis, a little bit from the prophets, and also from these experiences of the near-death experience individuals had similar imagery and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. For instance, the Talmud tells a story. There was a person named Rabbi Yosef, and it said that he got weak and ill, and then his soul left him. He died. And then it doesn't say what his illness was, but it says then he came back alive.